Hi, this is Kate from Generating Magic. So most of us have come to realize along our journey that these external things of the world, the relationships, the money, the career, none of it is the source of our happiness. And when we try to make it the source of our happiness, it only leads to unnecessary suffering because we fall into this conditional thinking, this dependency where we feel like we need that thing in order to make us happy. And then even if we do achieve it, usually we're not satisfied for long, right? It's just kind of on to the next thing, to the next goalpost, because because the thing is that you can't find something that's already within you. So whatever it is that you're seeking, the happiness, the joy, the ultimately the fulfillment, right, that you're seeking, it's already within you. And so by searching for it outside of yourself, it's just going to be an endless chase. And so we all kind of come, I think most of us anyway, right? I know I certainly have. We come to a certain point in our lives where we get tired of the chase. We get tired of the hamster wheel. And we realize that we recognize that it does indeed come from within us, and it's become somewhat of a cliche in the spiritual community that happiness is within you, but it's something that you kind of have to experience for yourself, and usually it comes from experiencing the opposite. It comes from trying to find it outside of yourself, that you recognize that it's been within you the whole time. But I think on the other end of the extreme, and so on the one hand, right, we're kind of being constantly programmed to believe that our fulfillment is to be found in these external things, the wealth, the perfect relationship, the perfect house, the external success. But then on the other end of the spectrum, there's all these spiritual kind of, I guess, Zen teachings, and sort of like in the non-dual tradition, that kind of talk about giving up all your earthly desires, right? And letting go of the mind, and just renunciating all earthly pleasures. And that really isn't a very satisfying way to go about living either. And mostly because most of us anyway, I know I still have, these earthly desires, but at the same time we're trying not to have them, or maybe we're beating ourselves up for having them, or, trying, and that itself becomes a process, right? Trying to let go of these desires. And so the way that I look at it, this is just kind of a revelation I had recently, and it's not necessarily anything earth-shattering, but for me, it was just a kind of a new way of looking at it. And so yes, these earthly pleasures, they're not the source of our happiness, but rather they're a way for us to experience that happiness that's already innately within us. Because if something is within you, right, the joy, the peace, the love, all these things that are innate qualities, while we're living in this human form, at least, it's hard to know what it's actually like until you actually experience it in the world. And so now I see all of these things, all of my goals, my relationships, it's all an opportunity to experience and to express and to extend the love and the joy and the peace that's already within me. And one mantra I've been working with a lot lately is, I am an extension of God's love. Because once you look at it that way, right, if you're an extension of God's love, then that means that there's nothing to seek, right? You already have that love within you. And at the same time, the way that you get to experience this love is by extending it to other people, by expressing it to other people. And at the same time, by doing things out in the world, by pursuing our passions, by pursuing certain projects or certain goals, I think that's another way of knowing those innate qualities experientially, and just really kind of getting to know ourselves on a deeper level. And recognizing beauty of being human is just experiencing this full spectrum of experiences and emotions. And what I talked about before, right? Really kind of seeing, on the one hand, seeing the divine perfection behind it all, but at the same time appreciating the nuances of the unfolding. And I know a lot of people use the movie analogy, but I think it's such a good analogy because it's so easy for us to relate to. And so in a romantic comedy, we all know how it's going to end. They all follow the same formula, but at the same time, there's a certain pleasure in experiencing the ups and downs and experiencing those moments where maybe they're not going to end up together. And a lot of times that the movie is done really well, like I'll even feel those emotions with the characters. I'll even feel that frustration or that anxiety or that sadness, even if I know how it's going to end, right? And I think the more we kind of look at it from that level of detachment, recognizing that, yeah, it is all a movie, and on the one hand, but at the same time, appreciating the unfolding and appreciating the nuances. And like I talked about recently with the novel that I'm working on, even appreciating those rough patches in between, because that makes the final product, right, that much more rewarding. The struggles that the protagonist experiences in the romantic comedy makes the happy ending that much more rewarding. And I know sometimes our society really likes, I think, these rags to riches narratives, and sometimes I think it can be a little bit exaggerated for dramatic effect, and we don't need to necessarily struggle a bunch before we achieve our goal. But I think at the same time, I think there is a lot of value in these stories, right? As recognizing that if you get rejected or if you're going through a rough patch, that it's not the end, right? It's not the end unless you say it's the end. There's always another chapter to the story. And that to me is kind of the true meaning of persistence, and yeah, just really believing in your vision, right? And not just believing in your vision, but appreciating every step of the journey. And yeah, so going back to this idea of happiness, and so realizing that, yeah, none of these earthly pleasures are the source of our fulfillment, but at the same time, they're an opportunity to be able to experience that love, to be able to experience that joy and that peace and all of its nuances. And at the same time, when we experience a situation that may feel unpleasurable, really kind of valuing the nuances and that as well, because then it helps us to more deeply integrate into those pleasurable, or appreciate those pleasurable experiences, right? Because you can't really know what pleasure is like unless you know what pain is like. And so really just loving all of it and loving the full spectrum of experience and of human emotion. And so with that, thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful day.